All right, good Monday evening, Mid-Michigan. Chief Meteorologist Chris Easlick with your Monday forecast update. And just making sure that our TV in front of us is muted so we don't get some echo here. And I'll make sure my phone is working as well. I think our sound is okay. Just give it one more second here while people join in. And I can hear it on my phone, so we're in good shape. So let's talk about winter weather coming up the next couple of days. Trying to break this down into Wednesday, Thanksgiving, and then Friday and beyond because there's a lot to talk about. So Wednesday is our transition day where we get temperatures that are still pretty warm in the morning. They start to fall off during the day. And what happens during Wednesday sets the stage for Wednesday night and also into Thursday for Thanksgiving. Now Wednesday, I think as you head out the door, if you are traveling early Wednesday, you've got no issues. You got rain showers early and we'll have that hour by hour forecast here coming up. But you've got rain showers early and then we get a bit of a break behind that. We get no wet weather for at least a couple of hours it seems. And then as we start getting some of that precipitation that wraps around the backside of that system, we start to get that transition to more of a rain and snow mix, or if it's cold enough as soon as that precipitation arrives, then we're just going to go to outright snow. I think another factor on Wednesday that is going to get lost in some of the snowfall discussion, which understandably so, is the wind. I think there's wind potential of greater than 40 miles per hour on Wednesday. And then once we get into Thanksgiving, we're likely going to see that continuation of lake effect snow. The highest accumulations, as is typically the case, is going to happen in West Michigan. That doesn't mean we won't get accumulation, at least here and there around the TV5 viewing area. But I also think we need to be aware of slick travel, low visibility, and also the possibility that accumulations could happen quickly on area roads. Lake effect snow squalls can be very dangerous to drive in, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to encounter it the entire time you're traveling. But I think it's something that we certainly need to highlight. Once we get to Black Friday, things start to wind down with the lake effect, but then our focus turns to another system that's on its way as we head towards this weekend. That could be anywhere between Saturday and Sunday. There's some timing differences between that system, and it looks like we'll have the possibility of something else moving in, which could bring both rain and snow. If you're wondering, the European model has mostly snow. The GFS, the American model, has a bit of a mix of both, and we're going to talk about both of those here in just a moment. So let me get back to our weather software here so I can actually shift between graphics. And before we get to what's coming up for the next couple of days, we do have a system to talk about tonight. We do have some winter weather that is getting set to move through, or excuse me, not winter weather that has to move through, as we got some rain getting set to move over the area tonight. That rain is not really hitting the ground just yet. Did see one observation site in West Michigan that was actually getting some rain down to the surface. It was a little bit closer to here on the west side of the state. Let me see if I can take a look at which site that was happening at. Looks like that's happening in Muskegon. Maybe a little bit of rain, it looks like, just to the east of Grand Rapids. But that's about it. Doesn't really look like much of this is hitting the ground for the time being. So rain is going to move through later tonight and tomorrow. What we are concerned with is not the rain that is coming through tonight, but it's what follows as we get into Wednesday. So here's how it breaks down. We've got your hour-by-hour forecast here. We've got temperatures pretty much in the 40s all night. We have no icy conditions to worry about as we take a look at your morning commute tomorrow. We have plain old rain through Tuesday. It's going to move through, it's going to move out, and it's not going to cause too many problems as it passes through. I actually think by the time we get down for dinner time tomorrow night, sit down at the table, most of this is gone. The one thing I will caution you is we learned about it Thursday of last week. There's the potential of drizzle. We are in drizzle season now. Usually in the fall and the spring, those are our most favorable times for drizzle. So I think even though the model right here going into tomorrow night, I would not be surprised if during this time there's still some patchy drizzle going on. But let's get to the more exciting stuff. We've got the showers moving out Tuesday night. We get this last little bit Wednesday before things finally start to settle down, or finally start to cool down. It's been a long week. Apologies for that. We see that move out. We get a couple of hours of dry weather. This little area right here, we've got the dry slot of the system coming through. Beyond that, you'll notice that our temperatures from morning until late morning have already started dropping into the 30s. We go into the afternoon, we drop even further. We're back down into the 30s by Wednesday afternoon. So whatever does come through Wednesday afternoon, or if it holds off until the evening, so be it. But we expect by the time we get that secondary wraparound wet weather, we're talking a rain and snow mix or just outright snow. In this case, this model right here seems to be pretty sold on the fact that we're not going to go through much of a transition period. We are going to go right to the snow showers. I think either one is still possible, but I don't necessarily think this is a solution that we can write off. It's only going to get more snowy as we go into Wednesday night. Notice the coverage though, it is scattered. I think this is going to be one of those events that is going to be different for everybody at different times. I think you're going to get some scattered snow showers. There's going to be gaps in those snow showers, and that is probably going to be the case into Thursday as well. So if you leave, say, Saginaw, just because that's where our studio is, first place that came to mind, if I leave Saginaw and I'm traveling, down to the south towards Detroit, say I'm hopping right on 75 and going towards the Detroit area, Wednesday night and into Thursday, there might be breaks from Saginaw to Detroit in the snow shower coverage. So it may not be snowing every single second, but if you take a look, there's some of these deeper shades of blue in here, and I think we'll get more information on this tomorrow. But you can see these little streaks that are just a little bit heavier embedded within these areas of snow. I do think this is a setup where we could get some squall-like tendencies with some of these lake effect snow showers. And what I mean by that is the snowfall amounts might add up to maybe a quick inch and a half, but it's not the inch and a half that you see for a prolonged event over the course of several hours. This is something that can happen very rapidly on the road, even a half inch on the road that comes down in maybe a couple of minutes. That is very hazardous. And so I think that is something, again, we'll get more detail on how sure that's going to be tomorrow, but I think that's something we need to pay attention to once we get into Wednesday night and also through your Thursday and perhaps even into your Friday morning as well. So we fast forward through time. We've got scattered snow showers right through Wednesday evening. We've got scattered snow showers through the day Thursday. You can still see some of those darker streaks of blue that are embedded within that main line. And you'll also notice our temperatures have dropped closer to the freezing mark during that period as well. We have learned over the last couple of events that going back into the sleet of last week and going back into the lake effect a couple of weekends ago, that we had light snowfall amounts over most of the area, but still had some heavier amounts in places like Freeland. We had some heavier snow showers in the Thumb. Even with temperatures above freezing, there is a melting factor to a degree. But if it comes down hard enough, even with that sleet that we had last week, if it comes down hard enough, it can still cause the roads to be slick. And so the closer you get to that freezing mark, even if it's right at 32, I think now that we've had some colder air the last several weeks, we're starting to cool down our ground temperatures a little bit. Is it still a factor? Yes. But I think we are looking at the potential of slippery roads at times on Wednesday night and also into Thanksgiving. So if you are traveling, I would encourage you to be very careful as you do so. And again, this might not be your whole drive. Depending on where you're going, this could be part of the time, but I want you to be prepared for the rapidly changing conditions. You can go from clear skies one moment, and then the next you get in a snow squall, and all of a sudden you can't see, 20 feet in front of you. And obviously that's not a great mix out on the interstates. We see it every year. We get accidents, or we get quick ice buildup on the roads with some of those heavier snow showers that come through. So I just want you aware of that. It continues right through Thursday. It doesn't really slow down. I think we do get a bit of a break once we get into Friday. Friday morning, we'll probably still have some snow showers, maybe Friday afternoon. We will be moving in the right direction by the time we get to Friday evening, but that's when our attention starts turning to the weekend, which does have more questions than answers for the time being. So just quickly here, we won't spend a ton of time on it. These are just some of the rainfall amounts. I think these are probably a little bit too much for areas like Lapeer and Sandusky. I think 4/10 for something that moves through pretty quickly, probably a little bit much, but I think a lot of us have some realistic totals, generally less than 1/4 of an inch with some of that rain that moves through tomorrow. So I would say these are a little bit more of an outlier unless there's one final little push there as that starts to move out on Tuesday. I'm not going to show numbers because doing so for the whole state would be disingenuous, especially with lake effect snow. Lake effect snow, oftentimes we are assessing right up until about that lake effect snow starts when it comes to specific amounts. But what I want you to see is here's the TV5 viewing area right here. These counties going all the way up and around. The heaviest snow is in northwest Michigan. The heaviest snow is in southwest Michigan. And then also, I don't have it quite centered here, but if we zoom to the north and the UP is obviously going to get slammed with snow. They've got more of a winter system coming through, not just the lake effect. And then I think some lake effect on top. I've been focusing a little bit more on our forecast here closer to home. But this is a good representation of where I think some of the heaviest snowfall is going to be, at least from Wednesday through early Thursday afternoon. This is obviously going to go farther out in time once we get into tomorrow. But the model that we have, the high resolution model that we have, only goes so far out in time. But what you'll notice around most of mid-Michigan is we have these lighter shades of gray, some darker shades of gray. If you're in Roscommon County, Ogama County, you're likely probably going to get a couple of inches of snow out of this, assuming the wind direction cooperates and it's not constantly moving. When the wind direction constantly moves, it's almost like you've got a fire hose. You're spreading it out over a wider area, and so those snow showers don't concentrate as much and hit one area specifically. So I think we can get a couple of inches out of this in our northern counties. And then you notice this little area right here. Try not to get caught up in the exact location. I think this could wiggle around depending on the wind direction. But we could get some totals in some of those heavier snow squalls or more persistent lake effect snow. A couple of areas locally could pick up a couple of inches as well. But I want you to take away that the heaviest snow is likely going to be in northwest Michigan, in the UP, and in southwest Michigan too. That could vary a little bit depending on the exact wind direction by the time we get to Wednesday night and Thursday. But our snowfall amounts, relatively speaking, compared to the other parts of the state, will be relatively minor here close to home in the TV5 viewing area. Let's take a look at what we're talking about with the wind, because I think this is a factor too. The wind heading into Wednesday, I think you'll start to see that wind pick up. And this model right here tops out Wednesday morning at roughly about 30 to 40 miles per hour with the gusts. We fast forward a little bit into Wednesday afternoon, and there is potential here, where, especially where you see these purple shades, that our wind gusts could exceed about 40 miles per hour. Notice a lot of the plot numbers don't exactly get to 40 miles per hour, but I think there's a real potential we could see some gusts for a time on Wednesday, and I think we'll get a better idea of the exact timeline on Wednesday too as we get into tomorrow. But I think there is a window where we are going to get some gusts between 40 to 45 miles per hour. And if you live near the shoreline areas, say you're out in Port Hope, say you're out in Harbor Beach, Caseville, Sebring, those types of areas, the closer you get to the water, could we see some wind gusts that occasionally get up to about 50 miles per hour? I don't necessarily think we can write that off just yet, but wait for more information tomorrow. We'll see if we have any wind advisories that are issued. At the very least, I think it's pretty likely we get some gusts between 30 and 35. The top end of that range, again, I think is going to be over 40. There is a small chance, as we get this system to work its way through, we get a little bit of a break on Wednesday night where things slow down. But we go right back into Wednesday night, into early Thursday morning, the wind just picks back up again. And so we've got that northwesterly flow. And so not only are we talking about those lake effect snow showers that could briefly be heavy and potentially cause some visibility issues, now you've got snow falling and you've got wind gusts between about 35 and 45 miles per hour. So now you're adding visibility issues to the road as well, especially where those lake effect showers are heaviest. And so I think we need to be mindful of that. If it's a fluffier snow with some of this lake effect, could it be blowing over the roads at times? I think that's possible too. And then going through Thursday itself, we're still getting some of those strong gusts between about 40 and 45 miles per hour, and occasionally, again, maybe near 50 as you get closer to Lake Huron, or if you're traveling to the west side of the state, I think you could see some wind gusts that are above 50 miles per hour the closer you get to Lake Michigan as well. So here is one thing that I want to show you as we head towards the weekend. So this is the European model. I'm going to show you two models first, and then we'll talk about it. I want to show you the two differences first. Let me just take a look at the chat and see if any comments have come through. Amy says, heading to Grayling on Thursday, should I reconsider? I don't necessarily think you should at this time. I think this is one of those situations where, because your entire drive may not be affected by that, I think you can probably, as long as you expect to slow down here and there, I think as long as you expect to take it easy at times, I think you can manage, give yourself extra time. But what I would do before leaving the house is, with lake effect snow, find out what the radar looks like, maybe check the MyDrive map and see what traffic speeds are like. Check in with us. We might have visibility on a couple of our shows or online as we go through the day, but I wouldn't say that's necessary right now, but make the decision that's best for you. If you're uncomfortable driving in potentially rapidly changing conditions, maybe it is. I think it depends on your comfort level, but is this one of those storm systems that I think absolutely you need to stay home? I don't think we're there yet, but I do think caution is advised. Let me see. Cindy is joining us from Beaverton. Nice to see you, Cindy. How much snow for Thursday? Richard asks. Richard, I gotta know where you're from first, and I say with lake effect, that's a pretty tough question right now. And Taylor says, is Saginaw going to get snow Wednesday night? Yes, it's possible, especially with the lake effect that's coming through, but it will be scattered. So we'll have to see just how much and how often it snows. But I think it's possible Saginaw gets some snow Wednesday night, or at the very least at times on Thursday. Kristen says, how about travel to Wisconsin on Thursday? Depends on which way you go. I think if you're taking roads that take you close to Lake Michigan on Thursday, and if you're taking sort of a path, if I can pull out my pointer, if you're going down this way, I would say you're probably going to need some extra time. Or that might be a trip that could be a little bit tough because the lake effect is going to be heavier in this area. So again, I think that's a little bit more treacherous than some other areas. Sue, nice to see you. All right, we'll let some more comments come in if needed, but I want to show you the European model first. This is the weekend. And what I want you to take away from this is not necessarily any specifics. I want to show you that there's something in the area, but there's a lot to sort out still. So the European model, for those of you hoping for snow, this is the one you want. If you're not hoping for snow, this is not the one you want. So we zoom in to Saturday night. This would be an area of low pressure that tracks a little bit farther to the south at first. It keeps us on the cold side and brings more snow into our area Saturday night. And then I think at times going into Sunday, we'll have a chance to get some rain involved, maybe some mix as it pulls away, and then it's done by Sunday night. We're going to go right to the GFS model so I can show you the differences between the two. The GFS model is dry through Saturday, and then once it starts moving in on Sunday, you'll notice it starts to snow at first, and then all of a sudden you're transitioning over to rain a lot sooner, and there is a lot more rain coming with the American model, the GFS model solution, compared to the European model. And so what that tells us is two things. It tells us that there is a system that is likely going to come through the Great Lakes region this weekend. What it doesn't tell us is the specifics. It tells us that there are two scenarios here. One, with the GFS, if that rain is coming that far north in that fashion, it is likely an area of low pressure that is going a little bit farther to the north. The European model, on the other hand, is going a little bit further to the south, keeping us on the cold side of the system until at least it starts to pull away from us to the northeast as we head into the weekend or latter half of the weekend on Sunday. So what I would do is if you have plans this weekend, Saturday or Sunday, I would stay tuned. I think accumulating snow is possible, but I don't think it's guaranteed because we're still seeing these differences here. We are still 6 days away, 5-6 days away from this storm system happening. I think you'll start to get more of a consensus and more of an idea as we get closer to about Wednesday or Thursday when that system starts to come onshore of the Pacific. We can start getting weather balloons in that. I think we can start getting more specific data, and we can start getting some of this lake effect out of the way by the time we get to that system. So as far as the weekend goes, wait and see. But I want you to know that the weekend is worth paying attention to. I think it's possible we get some accumulating snow after what falls with lake effect on Wednesday and Thursday. How much? Far too early. But it is something that I think is noteworthy. We'll put that out there. Let me go back to this graphic here, and I'll take a look at the chat because this is, I think, a really good summary graphic for those of you who might just be joining. Gary asks a really good question. Gary says, which model is generally more accurate? Over time, the European model tends to be more accurate. And if any of you were watching our live streams last week, there was one live stream, I can't remember what night it was. It was sort of our first look at Wednesday and Thursday of this week. And I told you that the European model was far more bullish than the GFS model on lake effect snow. And the GFS model was practically dry, had hardly any lake effect snow. The European model, on the other hand, had plenty of lake effect snow, and that seems to be what we're seeing this week. I told you last week that if I had to pick between the two, it wasn't necessarily set in stone, but I would lean towards the European because the Great Lakes are still open for business. They have open water. There's no ice coverage. We have cold air moving through, and the waters are still relatively warm down below. So the European was my favorite last week. And typically, Gary, the European over time is more accurate. However, what I will tell you is they all have their good days and they all have their bad days. I would still be more inclined to lean towards the Euro than I would the GFS towards this weekend. But I also need to see a little bit more. So it's a really tough question to answer right now. Let me see if I can pull something up, and maybe I can find a little bit of an indicator as to which one might be looking a little bit more favorable. See if I can get the ensembles going. Give me just 1 second. I know there was another question in there. Janice asked, what about Thursday for Thanksgiving travels to Davison? Janice, it really depends on where you're headed. So if you can tell me where you're headed, I'd be happy to answer. Joe, good to see you, Joe. Traveling from Bay City to St. Louis for Thanksgiving. Joe, I think that's manageable. The only thing that I would tell you, Joe, is just make sure, it depends on what way you go, I suppose, but if you go from Bay City down to 46, and you take 46 over to St. Louis, I would just watch those open field areas. If you get some snow showers, the wind tends to be a little bit more intense in those open field areas. I suppose you're probably going to run into open field no matter which way you go from Bay City to St. Louis. But when I was at CMU and I was first starting here at TV5, those open field areas with the wind right along 46 going from St. Louis through areas like Breckenridge, Merrill, those areas definitely a little bit windy. But I think before Janice chimes in, if she wants to let me know where she's going, I think regardless of where you're going Thursday, you need to be prepared for rapidly changing conditions if you run into some of these snow squalls. I think that goes for anywhere that you're traveling. As long as those snow showers are passing through, just be ready and be able to slow down. You know the drill. I know it gets frustrating. Of course, it's winter. We know to slow down, but we see accidents all the time, and it's those lake effect showers sometimes that come out of nowhere. And unfortunately, usually it happens when you're going towards Lake Michigan, but we get those pileups every year because they're so dangerous. And so I don't want to make this into some mega snowstorm Wednesday or Thursday. That's not what I'm trying to do. I just know lake effect snow can be very tricky. Jason and Lori Brown. Jason, I know you're always watching from Ogama County. How's it looking for Wednesday and Thursday? I think you're going to get some snow, Jason. How much, not ready to say just yet, but you're close enough to the lake effect that I think you're going to pick up at least a little bit. I would probably say decent bet on a couple of inches. And that's probably over the course of a couple of days, not all at once. But you know how the roads can be, close to Lake Michigan, up there getting that lake effect, so I would be careful with that. Let me just take a look. This is the... Let me pull up our model software here. And I think we can do some illustration. If I think I pulled it up in the wrong thing. But I can look at it just the same. So the European model, it's not really showing it like it was earlier. So we'll come back to that later this week. We're going to be doing streams this week, so we'll try to answer that question. For whatever reason, that graphic is not cooperating with me right now. But yeah, long story short, before we end the stream, because we've got our 10 o'clock newscast, we could probably talk for a couple of hours on this. Wednesday, you've got rain early. You've got even some rain tonight. The rain tonight, not a big deal. Starts to come through later tonight. A lot of dry air over mid-Michigan right now. So if I pull up the radar just to show you, you'll see that there's precipitation actually overhead for the moment, but it's not raining in downtown Saginaw, at least at my last check of observations. So there's probably a lot of moisture above our heads. It's probably not coming down to the ground in every single one of those spots, but you're going to have some rain tonight and tomorrow. You're also going to have the possibility of some rain on Wednesday. You're starting your day Wednesday with rain. We get a bit of a break after that, and then whatever comes around after that chance for rain Wednesday, we are going to cool our temperatures down. Your temperatures are going in reverse on Wednesday. You're going to cool down from the 40s in the morning to the 30s by the afternoon, and that's when you make that transition. Windy conditions on Wednesday. Falling snow, windy conditions, not a great mix for visibility. Thanksgiving, lake effect snow. Highest accumulations in West Michigan. That is normally the case. But those winds are going to be so strong from Wednesday into Thursday. I think our sustained winds are even windy, 15 to 30 miles per hour sustained. The gusts are over 40 miles per hour at times. I think those winds are strong enough to carry these lake effect snow showers well inland away from Lake Michigan. So we will get some lake effect snow. Slick travel, low visibility, and quick accumulations out on the roads are possible. Be ready Thanksgiving. It may not be your entire drive, but make sure you're prepared for that. And then Friday and beyond, lake effect winds down Friday, but then we watch another system for the weekend, which could have more accumulating snow. So breaking news 989, guy is everywhere, Ryan. Thanks for joining the stream. It says, bring on a blizzard. I don't think blizzard conditions are impossible for parts of the state this weekend. Is it going to be locally? Maybe not. But the fact that we've got some winds that are, sustained for a long period of time, I think there could be some blowing snow around the state. And so even if it's not locally, I think there are some areas that could get that. Just so you know, blizzard criteria has to be sustained winds or frequent gusts of 35 miles per hour or greater for 3 hours or more, and visibility has to be frequently at a quarter of a mile or less. So the amount of snow doesn't matter. We could have an inch of snow and have a blizzard. We could have a half inch of snow and have a blizzard. But as long as that visibility is at a quarter of a mile or less for 3 hours or more, and the winds are sustained or have frequent gusts of 3 hours or more at 35 miles per hour, we can have blizzard conditions. So are we going to get to that criteria again locally this weekend? I don't think so. Or at least I don't think it'll be a widespread thing. I don't think our sustained winds are strong enough for a long period of time. But around other parts of the state, I think blizzard-like conditions at times. Maybe we don't reach the criteria officially, but with those winds coming through, I think it could feel that way at times. Let's see, accumulation and total snowfall. AJ, it's tough to say with the lake effects. I think our totals generally around the TV5 viewing area are probably going to be relatively minor. I'd say most areas probably around an inch or less, just because the snow is not expected to be persistent in most areas for a long period of time. But there will be some localized areas that I think could get a couple of inches, especially the further northwest you go, or the areas that get the most persistent lake effect band. I just think it's tough to say for sure what the top end of that range is for now. I think if the European model is correct going into the weekend, I think you could have a better chance at removing snow this weekend. Sherry, Thanksgiving Day from Gladwin to Midland. You're going to run into some lake effect snow, so just be careful, or at least the possibility of some scattered lake effect snow showers. I think if you give yourself plenty of time, you'll be fine. Paige checking in from Bad Axe, or as Chuck Waters used to call that, the naughty hatchet. It's one of my favorite Chuck Waters references. And yeah, AJ, I think that's the best thing. We shall keep an eye. I think somewhere we'll probably need snow removal between now and the end of the weekend. I just think it's tough to say with the lake effect right now. And I think we've seen it enough up to this point with the lake effect a couple of weekends ago, and also the possibility of, that sleet we had last week where it came down and slushed up the roads a little bit. We didn't necessarily have to remove that, but I think even with temperatures above freezing at times, we still saw accumulation. So this year, it's been more of a factor in other years, and we have had melting to a point. But I think this year, the melting factor has probably been a little bit overstated, admittedly, which is always tough. It's tough to predict melting, but I think you'll find someone's going to need removal at some point in the days ahead. Yeah, absolutely, AJ. We're happy to do the stream. Give it just a couple of more minutes here, and then we'll have to hop off for our 11 o'clock newscast and our 10 o'clock newscast. But had a good crowd tonight. Always good to see. Main message, again, is just be careful on the roads. This is not going to be snowmageddon as far as the amounts, especially Wednesday and Thursday. But I think it's just one of those situations that can be pretty tricky out on the roads if you're not careful. And then we'll watch the weekend as we get closer. So let's get through the lake effect Wednesday and Thursday, and then this weekend we'll focus on what happens with that. All right, not seeing any more come in, so we will let the stream go for the time being, but I will check some of the comments after we are done, just to make sure that I don't miss anybody. But otherwise, I will see you all tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. Then I will be off Wednesday through the weekend, but if anything, for those of you who follow my Facebook page, Meteorologist Chris Easlick, I'll have updates even though I'm not here. And of course, the team will have you covered as well. And if obviously anything changes with the system this weekend or it becomes more of a serious matter, then obviously we'll have plenty of updates with that as well. But thanks to everyone for joining the stream tonight. I will see you tomorrow night with hopefully more updates.